How's it going, everyone? It's K Limited here, and this month we are doing Halloween month, so every video is going to be Halloween themed. Everything is going to be, whether it's spooky themed or just kind of related to Halloween, everything's going to be all about that. So I figured, you know what, let's kick this month off with something that isn't quite obviously a horror game, but it does have some Halloween influences because this game has Sonic the Hedgehog turning into basically a werewolf version of himself called the Werehog. So it's like, I'll allow it. So we're kicking this month off with Sonic Unleashed on the Xbox Series X. You can play this game through backwards compatibility, and it does get quite a decent boost on the Xbox Series X, I will say. It runs at 60 frames per second most of the time. It does have some slowdown moments, but very rarely, and it seems to only happen whenever you are jumping and like swinging on some of these poles that you can swing on some missions. But for the most part, it runs very well, and the game still looks really, really good for what it is. So this entire game is all about Sonic the Hedgehog, and he, at the very beginning of this game, you see him as Super Sonic, and he gets captured by Eggman, and Eggman uses the power from Super Sonic and the Chaos Emeralds to basically blow up the entire planet. So he blows up the planet, and basically this gigantic dark Gaia monster starts coming out from the middle of the planet, and it sends these little dark Gaia, evil little shadow creatures everywhere throughout the planet. So now the planet is in literal pieces. The Chaos Emeralds are drained. Somehow the cannon that Eggman used on Sonic turned him into a werehog. It doesn't really make sense, but it doesn't really need to. You know, it's a Sonic game. Who cares? But all of this crazy stuff is going, and now Sonic has to basically use his new werehog powers along with his regular daytime normal hedgehog powers to get the Earth back together, put it all back together, put all the pieces back together, and take all of the Chaos Emeralds to their temples to recharge them so he has a chance to take on the big old Dark Gaia monster that was born a little bit too soon. Eggman, when he shot the planet, it was actually a little bit too soon. The Dark Gaia monster wasn't ready yet, so he's basically trying to gather all these crystals before it becomes basically a full adult, you know, becomes the perfect monster. So that's the whole plot of this game, and you know what? It's pretty good for what it is. I actually enjoyed the story of this game, and I enjoyed that the characters that you meet along the way. You meet a character called Chip in this game, and he's basically the other main character. He's with you throughout pretty much the entire game, and he's just this little like flying creature, and he has amnesia at the beginning of the game. He doesn't really know where he is or who he is, and Sonic is trying to help him find his identity, and that's another subplot that goes on, and I actually enjoyed learning about Chip and figuring out who Chip was. So I like all of that stuff. And then, other than just the story, you have the actual gameplay, and that's what matters the most, right? The gameplay in this game is actually really fun. I like a lot of the levels. In this game, you're going through two different types of levels. So you have your regular Sonic the Hedgehog levels that you do in these daytime missions, and then you have the secondary levels that are more like beat 'em up style, like platforming levels that are basically, it's basically a 3D beat 'em up level where you are playing as Sonic the Werehog, and you have all of his souped up Werehog powers, and you are just going ham and beating up a bunch of these Dark Gaia monsters and also Eggman's robots. So you have these two different missions, and it's actually kind of nice that it balances them very well, because, you know, you can just jump back and forth in between the missions, so it doesn't really feel like it ever gets too repetitive, because you're constantly bouncing back and forth between regular Sonic stages that you're used to, where you're just running really fast, you're just trying to collect all the collectibles on the level as quick as you can and get to the end goal, and then you have the other levels, you know, like are basically right afterwards, where you are just doing beat 'em ups, beating up a bunch of monsters, and trying to get to the end of the level in those ones while also finding collectibles as well. So I like the balance there. It definitely makes it so the game never really feels too like repeatable. It never feels like it's, you know, just, it never gets boring. So I will say that they did a good job making sure that this game never got too boring. It definitely felt like they knew how to swap it up enough so it would feel like every single time you're hopping into a level, you are excited for it and you're ready to see what's next. And every level looks very different from one another as well. I like all the different environments that you get in the daytime and the nighttime levels. I love both of the environments. I love the collectibles in this game. You have to collect these little medallions, these little sun medallions, these little moon medallions, and you have to actually pick those up to be able to unlock levels later on. So you need to make sure that you're picking those up and looking for them in the levels. you may have to replay some levels because obviously, you probably want to get a good score on the level, and to do that, you have to beat the mission very quickly. But you also have to find all those medallions. So you may want to replay it and take your time after you beat it the first time and try to find all those medallions. That way you can, you can get your good score at first, but then you can go back and actually get the medallions you need to progress further in the game. And I didn't actually mind repeating levels in this game. I actually kind of enjoyed it because all of the levels are very well designed. All of the, just regular Sonic levels, I loved. I love the regular Sonic levels. It's the 3D goodness mixed with some 2D areas. 2.5D areas where you are just jumping on rails, grinding on rails, jumping and avoiding obstacles, taking down a bunch of different Eggman robots in the daytime levels, and then you have the nighttime levels, and there's a lot of obstacle courses on there. A lot of the level designs are just really well done, and there's a few levels I'm not a huge fan of, but for the most part, I enjoyed a lot of them. The only levels I would say I'm not a huge fan of are the ones where you basically are like walking on a tightrope. Those ones are pretty rough. But other than that, there's only like a couple of them that are really, really bad. The rest of them, though, I really enjoyed. So I think they did a great job with the level creation in this game. And all of the levels and everything are very bright and very colorful, just like all of the characters are. I like that all of these different areas that you go to have their own individual hub worlds too, because you have to travel around the world. And you pick like an area on the world, you go to it, and then you have a hub world that you can run around in, and you can collect stuff on the hub world as well, and then go into the mission area on each area. And there's multiple areas like that, and I think that's really cool. Basically for each environment, there's a completely different hub world that you get to walk around. And I actually thought it was really well put together, and it never really felt too confusing. They did a really good job of still somehow keeping it all organized, which I was kind of impressed by. So usually, like, I've played other games where they have a bunch of different hub worlds, and it usually just feels like a clunky mess. But this game actually did it right, so they did a great job with that. Another thing I do want to say about this game is that the music is fantastic. Absolutely love the music in this game. I also do really like the sound effects and stuff. A lot of the sound effects whenever you're fighting some of the monsters and, like, you're fighting the, Dr. Robotnik's soldiers, whenever you're fighting those things and you're doing, like, your special moves and stuff, because you can do these, like, special little grapples and stuff, it will play, like, casino sound effects and stuff, and I actually kind of like that. I thought it was actually pretty cool, and I like the rest of the sound design in this game as well. And one thing that I also really like is I turned on the Japanese voice acting for this playthrough, and I really enjoyed the Japanese voice acting. I thought that was actually really, really good. And I may play all of my future Sonic games with the Japanese voices after hearing it, because I was actually really impressed by it. So I may keep it that way in the future. And I do like that they give you the option of English and Japanese voice, so that's pretty cool as well. But overall, this is a really fun game, and it has lots of boss fights too. And you have boss fights that are in the daytime, where you're normal Sonic, and then boss fights where it's nighttime, where you're the Werehog. And it definitely plays with the mechanics of both of those, and I really enjoyed them. And some of the daytime levels do kind of feel pretty similar, but I like the levels enough where it never really bothered me too much. One thing that I actually wanted more of is there's certain sections in this game where you are flying, and you're on, like, the back of Tails' you're on the back of Tails' plane, and you're basically, like, shooting down missiles and stuff, and shooting down Dr. Robotnik's, robots that he's made. I wish there were more of those levels, because they, like, give you one, and then there's, like, 10 or so hours before you get another one of those levels, and by the time I got there, I kind of forgot how to even play those levels, so luckily it wasn't too hard to learn again, because it was basically just a lot of QuickTime events. And I will say, if you're not a fan of QuickTime events, there is a lot in this game. There's a lot of QuickTime events in this game, especially for taking down bosses or doing finishing moves, so you may keep that in mind, but I don't really mind it. That's kind of part of the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 generation of consoles. There were a lot of games back then that had these QuickTime events, and it doesn't really bother me too much. So, but there's a lot of them, and some of them can be pretty difficult. And it is really annoying when you're about to do a QuickTime event for a finisher on an enemy, and they just knock you down because you missed the button. So that is pretty annoying, because they'll get health back when they knock you down if you miss a QuickTime event too, and that sucks. So not a fan of that. One thing I do like, though, is that you can actually upgrade your character's statistics. So you can actually upgrade Sonic's abilities. You can upgrade his Werehog abilities as well. You can upgrade his health. You can upgrade his speed. You can upgrade his battle, his, I guess, battle prowess is how you would phrase it. You can upgrade all of that stuff as well, and just basically grind and grind and grind to make your character better and better. That way you have an easier time playing through the campaign as well. So I do like that. And this is a pretty long game. I would say that this game took me pretty close to 20 hours, if not over. It's a long game, and like I said, it never got boring, it never got repetitive, and I really enjoyed it. The only other thing that I can really complain about is some of the bigger enemies get a little bit annoying. There's certain areas where you're fighting these gigantic Dark Gaia monsters, and they can it gets annoying because they do this jump thing where they jump, and if you're too close, and because these are beat 'em up levels, so you have to be close to beat 'em up. If you're too close to them and they do that jump, they'll knock you back, and then they send a wave out, and if your character stands up right when that wave is coming, they'll get knocked down again. And there's some of those levels where you're fighting those types of monsters on the rooftops. So if you get hit by that wave, you'll just fly off the roof and you'll lose a life. So that sucks. But I will say, they do give you plenty of lives in this game. And also, if you do run out of lives, they basically just give you continue, and you just start from the beginning of the level, so it's not a huge deal if you do run out of lives, but it will piss you off a little bit. But overall, I actually really enjoyed this game. I thought it was really fun, and it's Sonic the Hedgehog, but it definitely has its own spin on it, and I really enjoyed that. So I think that this is a great one to play for Halloween, with all the Werehog themes and everything. Why not pick it up and try it out? It's a bit of a darker Sonic game, especially the ending. The ending broke my heart a little bit, so it's a bittersweet ending, I will say that. This is just a fantastic game, though, and even the design of the enemies is great. Everything about this game is really, really good. Some of the bosses look similar, mainly Eggman's. Whenever it's Eggman's machines and stuff, those things kind of look similar. But the actual Dark Gaia creatures and stuff like that, they look pretty different. I like the way that they look, especially the actual Dark Gaia monster itself, the actual main bad guy. That thing looks disturbing, and it was interesting to fight. So the final boss fight kind of peed me off a little bit, but it felt pretty good when I beat it, I'm not gonna lie. So overall, this is a fantastic game. You can pick it up. I think it usually is about $15 if you want to get it digitally. I have a physical copy, which that cost me about $20. So it's worth picking up, though. It's a fantastic game, and I really loved playing through it, and I'm glad that I played through it. So go check out Sonic Unleashed on the Xbox Series X. You can play it through Xbox Series X by using the Xbox 360 disc. It is backwards compatible, and it is 100% worth it, especially since you get that boost. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. You have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.